welcome back to the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy. Just a quick personal update before we dive into today's episode. Recently, I was speaking about my trip in Bali and I had such an incredible time doing a 4-day business retreat, but what you didn't see is how much time I spent on the toilet. If you're heading to Bali anytime soon, I highly recommend stocking up on some anti-diarrhea tablets, getting some prebiotics or probiotics beforehand, because I ended up with a Giardia parasite. And if you know what that's like, it's like Bali belly on steroids. I had the incredible Rachel Parker. She messaged me probably about a week before and she was telling me she wasn't doing well. And I kind of went in with the mindset I won't have ice blocks in things. I will make sure I'm aware of what I eat. But it really kicked me and I got back to Perth, probably the worst flight of my life, and ended up recovering, got some medication for it. But my biggest lesson for that is sometimes if you're pushing so hard in business and you're thinking, I'll just wait until my holiday or my retreat and then I'll relax. If you're already burning out, you're going to hit rock bottom on that holiday. And so I think with today's guests and who I'm talking to, speaking about things like emotional regulation, really, being able to regulate your nervous system and a few of those other things before you go on the holiday so that you don't ruin the holiday is super important. But with that being said, I am feeling a lot better and I'm excited to come back into podcasting with a fresh mind and some more direction in where we're headed. So today I have the one and only Kimberley Haworth, a rockstar beauty business coach with 15 years of industry insights. Her charisma is off the charts and she fearlessly brings her authentic self into everything she does. Kimberley has owned several high multi-six-figure beauty businesses that have become industry sensations. She lives by the motto, fuck normal, make your beauty business exceptional, and her equation for success is pure magic. Mindset plus strategy equals remarkable results. Most recently, Kimberley saw a gap in the beauty industry for knowledge on how to successfully run a beauty business whilst being cheered every step of the way. And so Beauty Business School was created. Beauty Business School is proving beauty therapy is more than just a hobby. Beauty training taught you how to be really good at treatments. Beauty Business School will teach you how to attract your dream clients by creating a beauty business that stands out in a busy industry. It's time to be the CEO everyone is trying to marry. Beyond her professional wizardry, Kimberley wears the badge of a dedicated motherhood with pride, gracefully juggling the chaos of her bustling life, proving you really can do it all. Welcome to the show, Kimberley.
Thank you. What an intro.
I was trying so hard not to stumble just then. I was like, this is so much and I'm loving it.
Everyone's like, write an intro about yourself. I'm like, sure. I clearly have no qualms with writing about myself, but I've never heard it actually said out loud. I'm like, this is dedication. I'm proud of you for seeing that through.
I know, as I'm reading this out, I'm like, she's definitely good at copywriting. This isn't some chat GPT boring bio. This is something that's actually spicy and I'm 100% here for it.
Thank you. Copywriting, marketing, branding, it is definitely my specialty. I am here for a brand that stands out. And you know what? I think if you're going to represent yourself. Actually put it out there.
I love it. Before we dive into how you got to where you are today, I think it's a really interesting point to make of I remember and completely admire your launch strategy with Beauty Business School. I was just saying off mic to Kimberley that I had this dream one night that I was like, maybe I should do Beauty Business School or Salon Business School. And 3 days later, I started seeing these ads pop up and it was a faceless account doing all these reels and I'm seeing these ads and I'm just like, who is this person? Are they literally reading my mind? And then all of a sudden, I'm so glad you did show your face because now I'm like, I can actually do a podcast with this person.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun in that launch. I would say it's the most fun I've ever had launching something. Just people guessing who it was and a lot of people guessing right, I will say. A lot of people were like, it's got to be Kimberley. And I was like, well, we're never going to tell you. And people just were so invested in it. And then we sort of coupled the reveal of me as a person, and that I was the owner with our PR kits, and it just exploded. It outperformed anything I had even thought. I was like, oh, if we get a couple of hundred followers, that'd be amazing. And then like in 2 days we got 600 followers, and I was like, shut up.
And you're almost at 1,000 and you haven't even been around with that account for that long. Like that's just a testament to the strategy actually working.
Thank you so much. I am actually super proud, and there was a lot of thought that went into it. And I think when people think of marketing, they just think, oh, I'll show up on social media and I'll do this. And I'm like, no, it's so much bigger than that. And it's what I teach my students, and I'm sure what you teach as well, is like, you can't just show up on social media and think, oh, people will find me. You actually have to think, how are people going to find me so that the social media works?
Such a strong point. And I think as well, like posting is no longer a strategy. You have to be so strategic and innovative with your marketing strategies, because it's just like I was watching your podcast launch reveal video the other day, and I love that at the start there's that, I don't know how to explain it, like that TV bustling like, and then it's, hey, and you're talking. It's, what's it called when you're just stopping them in the scroll? I completely forgot the word. But just when it kind of just hits them with those like first little 3-second, like the trending TikTok videos that, you know, someone's jumping and then someone rolls and it transitions, all of that, and it's stopping the scroll. I'm like, that stuff is really exciting the first time you see it. But then when you see 100 or 1,000 people do that same thing, it doesn't become as effective. So when I saw your stuff, I was like, this chick is amazing at what she does, and I love it.
Oh, that's really nice. What a lot of people don't know about me is I work from home in a town of 300 people, and I don't have industry peers or anyone to be like, well done. So it's actually really nice to hear. And like, one of my values that I love is validation. And when someone's like, you did really well, I try very hard to be like, thank you. Like, I'm going to actually take it and I'm going to hear it, because we don't do that. And we don't actually be like, yeah, you know what? I did put time, effort, energy. And I really love that that's connected with you, because it means that the strategy works. It means I'm going to keep showing up. And yeah, there is a whole plan behind the plan.
I love it. I love it. So before we talk about more about Beauty Business School and what you've evolved to become today, where did you first start? Because I was looking through your timeline and I saw you've done so many incredible things, like launching Lash Vision conferences and your own academy. And then you just told me, hey, I'm only from a town with 300 people. Where does Kimberley's journey begin in the industry?
So I was from Melbourne. Shock horror, I moved during the lockdowns. I mean, to everyone's surprise. And when I sort of started in the industry, I guess it kind of starts back in high school. I really struggled with school. I really struggled to pay attention. I really struggled to learn at school. I used to sleep. Like, I literally failed math in year 12 because I slept. And he's like, I gave you an ungradable, which is basically a fail. I gave you a UG, we called it, because I couldn't grade you because you actually were never present, even though you were in the room. So like, I really struggled with school and I really struggled with finding a direction. And I remember everyone saying to me, you're really good at beauty. I would do my makeup and I would do my hair and I would do all that sort of stuff at home. And they were like, you're really good at beauty. You should be beauty. Now, I'm obsessed with grease. And I was like, I'm not going to be a beauty school dropout. Are you actually kidding? That's not who I am. I just truly, at that point in time, didn't see beauty as a career. And it's ironic that I full circled this shit. And I'm now like, let's show people beauty as a career. Because I was really raised with that, like, oh, you're going to drop out and do hair. Oh, you're going to drop out and do beauty. Like, at least you'll be making money. It was almost like if you didn't know what you wanted to do as a woman, you should just go do beauty. And
yes,
I guess that's where it really started. Like, I did have a natural flair for it, but I was so against it because of that thought pattern that the world had, and the industry had become a really polarized thing. So then I fast forward, went and had all these jobs. I worked in hospitality, front office manager. I sold car aftermarket for car dealerships. I did a little bit of modeling in there, which was not for me at all. I had a casual eating disorder in the middle there too. So once I got through all of the life, I finally was like, do you know what? I think I would like to get into beauty. And it was literally because I saw an ad in the newspaper for a lash salon in the newspaper. This is revealing my age. So it was a lash salon. They had an ad in the newspaper and they were like, we are happy to train you from scratch. And I thought, this is amazing. I don't even have to go to beauty school. I can just learn this treatment from scratch. And it was the most intimidating. The trainer was beautiful, but I was so intimidated because she's like, you'll either be good at this or you won't. And
it's so like, true though. Lashes is hard. It's like one of those things that you are good at or you're not. I'm sorry, but I was not amazing at it. And I kept trying and I kept practicing and I kept doing upskilling. And I was like, just don't think this is for me.
And like, I think that that's such a powerful thing that, you know, if you can recognize what you, one, love and lights your soul on fire, you're going to go so much further than just trying to constantly push and push and push to be good at something. So we didn't have training back then. It was trained in-house, and this salon is still an industry leader. And basically it was shit training, and they would say it was shit training. We've had this conversation since because they were like, yeah, well, we didn't know any better. We just were sticking lashes onto lashes and we didn't care about diameter or glue, or there wasn't these conversations. So I went and did that, and I had to keep going in over, I think it was 8 weeks. I went in for 8 weeks. I was trained to be a lash artist back when the standards were bullshit. So if that tells you about the standards now, it's like 8 weeks, guys. And they wouldn't let me work at the salon unless I dedicated myself to 8 weeks of free working. And I did it. I showed up and I got good for the period of time that thankfully, I was like, so am I shit at this? She's like, nah, you're good. So they were going to hire me, and unfortunately the job fell through because they were building a salon and the salon wasn't going to be ready, no bad blood or anything like that. And I started lashing from home illegally, not registered with the council, because I genuinely didn't know that was a thing. I genuinely was like I got reported eventually, just so everyone knows. And the council came out and I was like, I don't understand the problem. What do you mean? And they're like, you have to be registered. And I think they let me off the fine because I was so genuinely like, I don't get it. Like, what are you talking about? So that's basically where I started. Like, I started with humble beginnings. I was basically just working for cash. I was doing what everybody else does in the industry. And it wasn't until I suddenly was like, oh, well, I'd like to get a car loan. Oh, you can't get a car loan. Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to do XYZ. Oh, you can't do that, because I looked like I didn't have an income. It looks like I didn't have like a business. And that was, I suppose, the real turning point, was constantly being declined for things that I was like, well, hang on, this needs to become a business. Like, I need to actually show I am earning money. I was fully booked, but I had no evidence. So
that is a lot. I feel like the whole home salon and not knowing, I actually did the same thing. But I only did it for about 3 months. I didn't know any better. No one told me. I actually have a studio apartment, and I remember just kind of, I'll do my 5 models and practice, and then I would work through them, and I was like, maybe I'll try to do a few more. And then I realized, oh, I can't be running this from home. And then there was someone else in Perth who was going in and booking appointments and coming in secretly, and then she'd take photos and report you. And I just heard about that going around. And I was like, yeah, no, this isn't happening. Like, I'm going and doing it professionally and properly, because you just don't want to run that risk. It's like a $10,000 fine where we are. I don't know about you guys.
It was 14 back then. So I can only imagine. Because if she came in, she's like, it's a $14,000 fine. And I reckon all the colour in my face went, I was like, I didn't have $14,000. And she was so lovely, this lady. Like, I do remember. And she was just like, I just want you to know it was actually one of your clients that reported you. So you need to be very careful. And I was like, it was? So here's me in my own business being like, business, inverted commas, being like, oh my gosh, which one of you reported me? And it must have just, like, at the time, lashes weren't a thing. I literally brought them into my region. They didn't exist. So even the council lady was like, I think you fit under beauty, ? Because like it wasn't a thing that existed. So basically from there, I went and I learned makeup, and I did a makeup course. I worked in the back of hair salons, and I worked in the back of my mum's giftware shop at one point in time. And then it's just been like a constant, like, escalation. I'm like trying to get the right words, but it's like been an escalation of like, okay, well, this isn't really working anymore. What now? This isn't really working anymore. What now? And it's kind of that level of not that the business wasn't working, but it's like, well, I can't stay in the back of a hairdressing salon because I want to move to that next level. I want to bring staff on, or I want to go do something different. And where a lot of people hit staff, I hired one staff member and she had to get wrist surgery the week after I'm being celebrated. The background of my screen just put fireworks up.
I just had to get my first staff member. Boom, congratulations.
Yeah, literally. And I was like, and then she had surgery as soon as I hired and trained her, which is one of my friends, and we still joke about it to this day. But I'm like, remember that time I hired you to cover my maternity leave and then you went and had surgery and I was literally fucked. Like I had no one to cover it. So I had to close that down. And when I sort of like came back from doing that, I decided that I wanted to get into more education. I kept the salon going. And to do that at the time, when I said, well, how do I get into education? Everyone said, you have to have your diploma of beauty therapy. So off I trot. I was like, I want to go do my diploma of beauty therapy. And I can genuinely say I hated it. Like I loved my teacher. I loved the people, but there was so many elements of the diploma of beauty therapy that I was like, this is not for me.
And what elements were they specifically? Were they the treatments or the way they taught it, or?
It's the way that they taught it. Yeah. It didn't land with me. I really struggled. Again, it was like being back at school. And whilst it is hands-on, my teacher, and I want to stress this because she may bloody listen. Beth, I love you. She was like a naturopath. She was absolutely incredible and I loved it. But the way that they have to teach the curriculum in like any RTO is disjointed. It doesn't make sense. Like it's very hard. I found it very hard to be a part of the education system.
I find, I don't know if you've spoken at TAFEs or anything like that, but I got invited, maybe you relate to this, maybe you don't, but it was really interesting. I got invited to have a conversation with some of the upcoming beauty diploma graduates, and all the people talking about how to run a business had never run a business. And I was going, if you guys don't know how to run a business and you're trying to teach people how to run a business, or if you guys don't always provide these beauty services in salon and you're trying to teach someone how to do it because you've got a textbook, follow these steps, I don't think you're a great person to be able to teach that. And I think that's why what you do and how you teach it and how you show up, it's going to resonate and connect with so many people in the industry because they realize that I can actually learn from this person because they don't learn the way you learn in an education system. We are so hands-on. We are so creative as people in the beauty industry. But put us into a box in a classroom where we got to rote learn everything, brains just shut off.
100%. And like this is not representative of all schools, of course. And it is why I think I became such a great teacher, even when I taught lashes and stuff like that, because I was like, yes, you need to know the theory, but how do we deliver this in the most user-friendly way possible? How do we make sure that this is going to land with you? And how can we pull parallels? Like it's so dry. It's so dry. I remember learning about electricity and I was like, what are we doing? Why are we learning about electricity? And like, oh, it's safety. And I was like, okay, but my brain couldn't contextualize it. Like I just couldn't piece together. So I could not tell you a single thing they said about electricity. There was 3 sessions. I still don't know. I still have no idea. And it was just sort of, I felt, check the box, not understand, not put it into your world and be like, do you know what? Different things work for different people and different curriculums are needed for different people. It was, and gosh, this was a long time ago. Let's just stress. This was a long time ago. So this definitely could be very different, but I just have never found the traditional education systems work for me. Basically, when the government is involved and they have their structures, it just tends to not work for me. And I think that is why getting into education, which is the next step for me, I became like, I won Educator of the Year in the first year of doing eyelash extensions. I won multiple awards for my curriculum in my business / vision. Like we became really big, really quick because I just had to simplify it. And even now in beauty business school, being a newer business, even today on the call with the girls, I was like, okay, I can see you're not getting this. How do I simplify it? How do I make this easier? How do we get it to a point that you can implement this? This feels tangible. Do you need more templates? Do you need me to go over this again? Do you need me to refilm it? Like, there is no limits to what I will do to help people understand, because I have always been the dumbest person in the room. And I say that with love to me. But I have always been the one who's like, come again? I don't get it. I'm not sure what you're saying. It's like some people speak a different language to me when they try to educate me.
So interesting you say that, because I find, having been through the education system more recently than you, like I graduated in 2019, so I'm 22 years old. And having gone through the education system, seeing how much different crap they're putting in there, like they're adding all this stuff in about, you know, in English, now they're adding in gender things and you have to write from feminist perspective and all these other things. And I'm just like, how is that teaching me anything that I'm actually going to need to know to survive in the real world? Or all these maths equations and things about triangles, like the only people that reuse that information are teachers when they go to teach it in high schools. And I find that we don't have enough emotionally intelligent people, or the people who are entrepreneurial and don't want to be put into a box and sit through that education system, go get a degree and then just work for someone else in another government organisation. Like, they really struggle to be able to play with that creativity and innovation. And, you know, as someone like yourself, you've gone and created multiple businesses. There's no doubt that somewhere along the line you knew you were different and you never fit in because, you know, maybe you had a different vision or you thought a different way. And in those education systems, I find that a lot of teachers or other people will make you feel like there's something wrong with you, but it's just your brain operates completely differently, and that's a blessing, not a curse.
Yeah, 100%. Sammy, everything you just said is why we're homeschooling our kids from high school.
Oh, I love that. I used to think they were weird, like homeschool kids, and now I'm like, I totally get why parents do it. Like, I have so much empathy now.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, when we went through the school system, it was obviously different and things have changed and things are rapidly changing again. And without bringing any politics into this at all, we just feel like children should be taught how to run a business. They should be taught their taxes. They should be taught like the things it takes to live in society. And so much of that is missed. And their schools are getting better in some ways. Like, they're bringing in a lot of emotional regulation and there's some great things happening in schools, but they're still missing the mark. And the reason they're missing the mark, and I say this about beauty school as well, and if any beauty schools are listening, I do want to work with you. I do think you're amazing. But school and beauty school teaches you to be an employee. You are being taught, whether you like it or not, to be an obedient employee who knows exactly how to do their job in a satisfactory way. And that is the difference between a business owner mindset and someone who is happy to have a job. And there is nothing wrong with having a job. If anyone who listens to your podcast is like, I like being an employee, that is power. Knowing where you sit and knowing what makes you happy is power. Because I find a lot of people think the grass is greener on the business side. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to like do all these amazing things. And then they make it personal about themselves when they fail. And they make it that they're a bad person. They're dumb. They're this, they're that. And I hear it day in, day out. And it's business. Like, it's actually, you have to be able to emotionally disconnect from the business, or you're constantly going to think you're not enough. And I think that you have to, as a business owner, really understand you're going to fail nearly every day in some way.
And you got to embrace it. You can't let that be your shutdown and play the victim mindset and then stay there. Like, if a client doesn't respond to your message, you don't go, they hate me, I'm so bad at what I do. Like, it's just like, hey, they were dropping the kids off to school and they completely forgot. Why don't you follow up?
Yeah, 100%. And we had this conversation before we even got on here, and I'm super open to sharing it, that like you and I both said as coaches, we've triggered each other at some point. We've looked at each other's accounts. We've, had students maybe go from one to the other, and it's like, well, shit, who's that person? What are they doing? That's human nature. That is actually really normal to have those emotions arise. But the difference between a business owner who is able to continually push forward in a really positive, happy, healthy mindset and one that pushes forward from anxiety and being miserable and hating their job is that you can emotionally be like, ooh, maybe that's a me problem, not a them problem.
100%.
When you can sit there and recognize those emotions in yourself and be like, do you know what? Yeah, the salon down the road bitching about me is bloody awful. It makes me feel like shit. But maybe that's a them problem and not a me problem. And I don't need to feed into this even a little bit. And when we have emotionally intelligent business owners, back to the homeschooling, when we teach children from a young age how to run businesses, how to actually do the business, society, grocery shopping, running a household, and they do it from an emotionally regulated way, we will see this entire planet shift. Everyone will change.
I love that so much. Have you watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, the new TV show? I don't know if that's a bit too weird for beauty industry podcast. I don't know. Sorry, guys.
I'm more of a Trekkie kind of girl. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm more of a Star Trek girl.
Gossip Girl, XOXO. No, I don't know. I watched Obi-Wan on the weekend, so this is exposing some of the things I get up to in my free time to switch off. And there's this young version of Leia, Princess Leia, if you've watched Star Wars. She's 10 years old and she's the most emotionally intelligent human ever. Her cousin comes in and he starts just bullying her and saying, you know, you're adopted, you're not this, you're not that. And she sits there. She looks like she's about to cry. She takes a deep breath in and she says, you're so this because you're trying to impress your father because you think if you sound like him, then other people will respect you. And she just like hit him with all these facts. And I was like, that is the ability to be able to take a negative situation and instead of making it mean something about you and taking it so personally, looking at the bigger picture of like, how is that person showing up and why are they showing up that way? And does this have something to do with me or is it more an insecurity that they're projecting? And when I take that lesson and I look at other areas of my life, when I launched Beauty Industry Leaders, full disclosure, I was so excited and I was so scared. I didn't know if when I reach out to other people in the industry who are industry leaders or aspiring industry leaders, if they would sit there and either turn up their nose and go, who do you think you are trying to do beauty industry leaders? Or they might go, oh, wow, this is so exciting. I want to be a part of this. And I haven't actually been probably nervous to interview anyone apart from you, Kimberley. And that is because I had that dream about that beauty business school and I was sitting here and I was like, oh my gosh, like and then I just realized more or less, sometimes the people that trigger you the most or you kind of sit there and go, oh, is there something about like it just brings something up? It's because usually it's a reflection of yourself. And more or less the people that you may feel so threatened by or you may get triggered by, usually you actually share a lot of things in common. And as we've had a conversation, we're like, we're literally so similar in the best way.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. I literally said this on my stories the other day. I have Counting on Kimberley, which is like personal brand. Let's go with the beauty industry where I give lots of tips and tricks and I show up looking like a mum. And then I've got beauty business school where it's a bit more put together. And I got on and I said, be careful who your ego won't let you be friends with, because your ego will do anything to keep you in safety and to stop you from growth. And that's its entire job. It's not egotistical. It's literally like that part of you that is like, no, I identify as someone who doesn't do big, scary things. And if I do big, scary things, it never works out for me. So becoming friends with someone or not seizing an opportunity, it could literally be your subconscious and your ego being like, no, if we don't do that, we will be safe. So we'll sabotage every possibility of you taking that road. And Sammy, I was exactly the same when I had to approach people in this industry bigger than me, much bigger than me, and be like, would you like a PR box? My ego was like, don't do it. They're all going to say no. They're all going to hate you. They're going to think your brand is dumb. Who has a pink and orange brand based on the 90s? Like everything you can imagine just flooded out of me. And I was just like, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Love that.
Just going to do it anyway. And if everybody says no, and there is people that never opened the message. There's people that said no to me. There's people that said no and then came back after I launched. We're like, actually, maybe. It turns out like this could be a good idea. And like, it's just the reality of growth is you have to do scary things that make you literally like, I'm sitting here breaking out in a bloody rash. And everyone's like to me, you speak for a living, you public speak. And I'm like, and it still scares the shit out of me. I just have decided that you either like me or you don't like me. And if you like me, great. And if you don't like me, cool. Let's just move on. Emotional intelligence is not having emotions. Emotional intelligence is recognizing the emotions, processing the emotions, and not feeding into people's bullshit. That is the most emotionally intelligent thing that you can do, is be like, that fully belongs to you and I'm not going there.
And to add on to that in what you're saying, it's kind of like that double-edged sword. Sometimes it's like, don't take it personally. It's not about you. But on the other hand, I want to say also, when you fuck up, when you make a mistake, when you know you've done something wrong, take ownership, because the more you can take ownership over your actions, your responsibilities, the faster you can move through problems in your life. I was thinking about this before. It was pretty much one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to ask it now because it's come back to my ADHD brain, is, Kimberley, what's a lesson that you didn't learn straight away and it kept coming up for you as a problem in your life or your business, and you kept thinking, why am I here again? And then you finally moved through it and you realized and you came out the other side. Like, has anything like that happened to you?
Yeah, many times. I'm like, which one would you like me to pick, really? I'm probably going to go with what's most prevalent. I've done a solid 2 years of like emotional intelligence and personal development and working with coaches. Like, I've dropped a casual like $90,000 on deep bloody work on myself. And that is not a brag that you should spend that much money, guys. It is just that it was an absolute priority for me because I nearly left the industry. And this thing is the reason that I nearly left the industry a couple of years ago. I have this habit of developing friendships that are based on toxic relationships. And basically what it means is like we'll call and we'll bitch about things either in the industry or with people in the industry or something like that. And I always thought these friendships were based on friendship. And so did the others, like all these people also did too. It was not like we were trying to create a toxic friendship. But what I realized was so many of my friendships were based around whinging about my business or whinging about other people in this industry or whinging about the way the industry is or whinging about the economy, and literally spending hours on end in this negative loop. And then, of course, eventually these friendships, they all broke down because they had a basis of negativity. And then, of course, when they broke down, they didn't end well because we had a basis of negativity. And the biggest thing that I found happened over and over again was I was like, I can't have friends. I can't be friends with people. And it's a mindset that I work on every single day now, that I'm like, I can have healthy relationships and I can have healthy conversations. And I don't need to bitch about, and I say bitch as like inverted commas, use your word here. I don't need to whinge about my life, and I can look for the positives, and I can work on having a non-victim based mindset, because a lot of people live in victimhood of like, I'm so hard done by, everything happens to me. And I was there, and that's what I'd pick up the phone and I'd be like, I'm so hard done by, everything happens to me. And I don't want to discredit talking about your emotions because that's so important, but there is a difference between whinging and sooking and talking about the same person and the same things over and over again and learning the fucking lesson and moving forward with that lesson and having constructive conversations. Where I literally said to a friend recently, I was like, hey, I've noticed our last few phone calls have been a bit like heavy and a bit negative. So for the next week, every single day, I want you to message me something you're grateful for, something that's positive for you. And it's clocking when you have those unhealthy relationships. And I will say for nearly the entirety until I'm going to say literally a year ago, I was in the cycle of having some really unhealthy friendships. And it was just from living very unconsciously, living from that place that most of us live, where it's like, there is a reason the news is negative. It's because negativity spreads faster than positivity. And you have to actively work on it every single day to be like, you know, what am I useful for and what is good and what can I sit here and be like, you know what, maybe that isn't working and there's a lesson in it and I'm going to process that. But like, where can I pull evidence that I have great things happening and coming to me?
Imagine if this podcast episode was called How Kimberley Ruined Her Life versus How Kimberley Found Fulfillment in Her Business. Like, which one would people click on more? And they're like, oh, the negative one. And it's so weird that we're geared that way. And I love that you owned all of that, because I think many in this industry, more or less, whether you want to admit it or not, you get caught up in that cycle. And even as women, it's such a competition thing. I find in beauty, I'm much the same as you. Sometimes I want to get out of it because I'm like, is beauty really the fulfilling industry I want to be in? That's a question I asked myself a lot the last 6 months. And I think about it because, you know, like you, I did modeling, I did a bit of pageantry, I ran a beauty pageant last year, I've done beauty services. And at the very core of the reason why a lot of people get beauty services is because they feel like they're not enough. And yeah, sure, I've had the conversation with other guests on this podcast that it's like, it's self-care time, it's doing something for you, but it's like, but that basis of why you're getting this, it's like, I used to have blonde hair because I got told having brown hair, you're not going to get those gigs, we need a blonde. Or it might be, you're not smart enough to go to uni because you didn't get the good grades, or you aren't making enough money to be able to do X, Y, Z. Like, there's so many times we as women are constantly told that we're not enough. And I think about beauty services. Are we doing the beauty services for ourselves? Are we doing beauty services to compete with other women who have been able to afford or go get that treatment done? Or are we doing it for men? Like, who are we really doing all of this for?
Never for men. I say this to my husband, you have more concern about me checking out a woman than a man. Like, I am like, that is a good looking woman. And my husband's like, no, just you. I'm like, oh, dude, you cannot tell me this woman's not attractive. Like,
no, but isn't that interesting? Because you're looking at the other woman and you're like straight away drawn to that. Like, the guys, your husband's not even noticing. Yeah. Like, that's 100%. The difference.
Yeah. And I think just to like circle back to it all, I first of all want to say to you and to anybody else out there that has been made to feel like they're not enough because of beauty standards, I'm really fucking sorry that society did that to you, because it's unfair. It's unfair that we're put in that position. It's unfair that we think we have to behave in a certain way. If you showed up with no makeup, it wouldn't change my opinion of you if you showed up with makeup. But in saying that, the beauty industry has this incredible power to give people what they are missing, because whether we like it or not, society still has that shit and it's not going anywhere. We get to work, and I always say, change the conversations in your salon to empower people. If they're dipping into negativity, turn them to positivity. If they're talking about the economy, say to them, oh my God, I'm listening to this amazing audiobook. I'm going to send it to you after your appointment. It's all about money mindset. If they're sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I wish I was as youthful, something I used to hear all the time, I wish I was as young as you again, or as beautiful as you again. And I would always be like, have you actually seen yourself, your aura, your personality, you are the most beautiful person I have ever met. We don't get told that. We are a summary of how we look. And I'm sure, Sammy, being that you've been in the modeling industry, and I've been in the modeling industry, it's a whole fucking thing. You are constantly told why you are not good enough. And you are the person that all the people are like, I should look like them.
Literally. It's so
and you are
true.
told you're not good at I'm 5'1". Could you imagine the feedback I got? You just need to make yourself a bit taller.
Yeah, you're not going to be tall enough for runway. You have to be 175. And I was like, if I'd be 175, I'd look so disproportioned. But
literally. And this is the thing that I think it's why I do love the beauty industry, is when you have that client in that room on your bed, the power to make them feel, look, and change and rewire who they are is yours. And that is fucking powerful.
I think when we look at the beauty industry and the services, the best way, like you're saying, is to come from that place of, how am I creating that experience that empowers them? Because more or less, often or not just in beauty, but in marketing messaging in general, we're always talking to the negatives of like this is why you're not here. You need to lose weight and then you'll be desirable. Have these protein shakes and you'll not, get rejected that one. Like, it's always so negative, but what if we flip that and turn it into a positive? Maybe that's better English. But I think with all the beauty services and things out there, there's some that are just all about enhancing what you already have. And then there's others that completely change who you are. It's just such an interesting way for us to perceive. I think social media has had a massive impact, like completely different segue here. But the amount of times that you see Kylie Jenner or someone who is highly influential in the world of social media, and all of a sudden now all these new products or trends are just coming off the back end of it. It's also extremely exhausting to try keep up with all of the ongoing changes in the industry, and also knowing which ones are going to align with your clients and your own brand values.
Yeah. To that, my advice would be don't, which is counterintuitive to what every coach will ever tell you. Don't keep up with it. And the reason you shouldn't keep up with it is you need to know your unique selling point. You need to know who you're talking to. And when we do copy, something that I've always naturally been very good at is selling. And I think it's because my mum was a sales rep and she used to just take me around and I used to listen. And I was like, oh, that's how you get people to buy shit. But basically, you do need to draw people in with their current mindset and their current problems. So if I was talking to me right now, I'm 35 and I'm like, whoa, I have pores. When did that happen? And I've got a few wrinkles and things that are starting to come through, and I'm like, well, do I get on the Botox, or like, what do I do? And I'm looking for every possible alternative because I've done Botox. I did it for a long time and I've really upheavaled my life. I've cleaned everything out. I eat really clean. I wear mineral makeup. Like, everything has been changed because my lifestyle has changed. And if somebody wrote a post and was like, I see you, I understand how you're feeling. I know you see those wrinkles coming up. I know you see those pores in your skin. I know how you're feeling, and I know that it doesn't make you feel good about yourself. But if you gave me 8 weeks of your life and dedicated yourself to this treatment, I know I could fix that problem. I know I could make that problem better for you. That is going to draw someone in so much faster than $99 facial.
Why do I need a facial? Why do I care?
What is it? A dermal therapist? Guys, dermal therapy, I don't even know what you do when I'm in the industry.
Yeah, that's so
true. What do you
true.
do? What is a dermal therapist? I don't know. And I say that with love, and I should, yes, be more educated 100% as someone in this industry. But I always almost undereducate myself a little bit because I'd like to see it from the client's perspective. They have no idea what you do. Lash techs, they have no idea what you do. Brow artists, no idea what you do. You know what they see? The before and the after.
It's like PMU. I was like, I've been coaching for 2 years and I keep seeing this PMU. What is it? What is it? I'm like, I know what cosmetic tattooing is. I don't know what PMU is. And then I was like, oh, permanent makeup. And then I was like, if I, as someone in the industry surrounded by people who always use the word PMU, don't know what it means, I'm sure that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who have no idea in your area what you're trying to say to them.
And this is where marketing goes really wrong. And I think this is where you either love me or you hate me. You're going to listen to this episode. You're going to be like, Kim's my bitch and I'm with her forever, like ride or die. Or you're going to be like, she triggered the shit out of me and I hate her. And that's actually, like, I'm so good with this. This is where people screw up marketing. Stop naming yourself something clients don't understand. Listen to their language. What are they saying? What are they calling you? What are they calling the treatments? Don't go and name things complicated names. Don't have 20,000 things on your menu because they won't buy because they won't know how to. It's that simple. When I go into a restaurant, no matter how good the restaurant is, if I don't understand the menu or there's too many items on that, I will default and I'll just like, do you have a bowl of chips? They could have got money out of me. Like, I certainly spend a lot of money if I go out for dinner. I would buy wines. I would buy all that stuff, but I will default to the easiest thing on the menu. Because I'm like,
or you just walk out.
Or you just walk out, yeah.
I'm going to go to Macca's and get an ice cream. I've seen that one happen a few times.
Literally. And it just comes from overwhelm. Like, what I do within Beauty Business School, and I'm sure what you do as well, is I constantly like, how can I reduce overwhelm for the students? How can I make this as simple as possible? How can I use language they understand? And like, we launched Beauty Business School under 2 months ago and we've got 17 members in there. And I truly put it down to the fact that I just know how to talk to you. I know what you're living through. I actually write journals on how I felt back when I was living those moments. If you can tap into the psychology, into the mindset of that client and truly understand what they're living through, how they feel about themselves and how shit that feels, and say, hey, I see you and it's okay. And I have a service that can actually help you. Ride or die client forever.
It's like that saying, people buy with emotion and justify with logic. It doesn't matter if logically your service is the best option. It just matters that they feel seen and heard by you.
100%. We're dealing with people. And
I always think,
forget that.
Yeah. Or like, why are we constantly undervaluing and discounting services over and over again when we just need to become better marketers? We just need to know how to speak to people. It's like, think of it this way. You're going on a date with this guy, maybe it's your boyfriend, and you have a massive argument. And instead of reconnecting and talking about what went wrong, he just comes and gives you like a Gucci handbag. And it's like he's just trying to buy your attention. And it's just like, it feels icky. It feels gross. You feel weird always offering discounts or trying to come up with another sale every single month. How exhausting. Yeah. What if you just learnt to understand how to clearly communicate your offer? I think circling back to what you were saying about use a title that people understand, even if you've gone and done this crazy training and you're certified in this, like, buccal massage. If people don't know what that means, maybe use facial or jaw relief massage specialist, like words that the everyday person is going to understand and be able to associate. Yeah, sure, some people might know what it is, but majority of people probably won't. I even knew that when I first started business coaching. I don't know about you, Kim, but I was like sitting there, I was like, am I salon mentor or beauty business coach? Because I don't know what people are typing in. And like back when I started, there was only, 5-10 people really doing it. Now there's a lot more people doing it. But I'm like, what title do people actually connect and resonate with? Because we both know coach and mentor, they're two different things. Mentor is, here's what I did, follow my steps, I'll give you guidance. Coach is, I'm going to help you move through these blocks. I'm going to teach you a specific skill or strategy. And so I'm like, what words do I use?
And what do you do if you do both? I'm a big believer that I'm a coach and a mentor. Like, I'm like, I don't toe one side or the other. I give you what you need. What do you need today? Some days I get on and I will whoop your ass, and other days they will say something and I'll be like, I want to hug you, and are you okay? And they're like, that is not what I thought was coming at me.
You got to have a hype girl, certified hype girl in the bio.
Actually, in our community, it's
Cheer Squad.
Sorry?
I'm surprised you don't have Cheer Squad. I saw your pom-poms.
Oh, yeah. It's something along the lines of Badass Business Bestie is my title. And like every time I like tap, it's like from Badass Business Bestie. I'm like, hey, it's me. Because I think with coaching and with looking things up in SEO, you're right. It's really hard to know, not so much for like lash artists or eyelash extensions or things that are like very painted and obvious, but for coaches and mentors and stuff like that, 100%, it can be like, how do you become discoverable in an industry that's just taking off? Like, really, people are like, there's so many coaches. And I'm like, dude, we are just taking off. You wait, we're going to triple. It's going to get even bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think
it's going to be like the beauty industry soon.
Like the beauty industry is going to be as many beauty coaches as there are like beauty therapists. You can have one each. It'll be amazing. And this is the thing. Like, I just don't see any threat in that at all, because I truly believe a good coach knows what they're good at. I'm really good at marketing. I'm really good at copy. I'm really good at branding. God, you want to launch a business? Come to me. I will make sure that business launches in a way that people will remember. That's my specialty. And when I think about it like that, and like the fact that I'm bringing funnels into the beauty industry, which people haven't done yet, they haven't talked about what a funnel is in the beauty industry, or maybe they have, but it hasn't been publicly done, if that makes sense. It really is that conversation of like, it doesn't matter how many salons there are. It doesn't matter how many coaches there are. What are you good at? And whatever you're good at, double down on it, triple down on it. Make it that when I think and I'm like, I'm going to run a conference, I want someone who is really good at copy. Oh, you know what? Kim is really good at copy. It's about salons dilute themselves, and coaches and whoever we're talking to on this particular podcast, you are diluting yourself by not owning the shit out of one thing.
Master
what are
one.
you good at? What are you passionate about? Double down.
It's interesting you say that, because at that Bali retreat, I was sitting there and I was going, where am I niching into? Because I feel like right now there's a lot of beauty business coaches. I'm going, everything you say, I'm just like, are we just the same person? Because I do all the branding, the marketing. I love copywriting. I love long form content. That's why I'm doing podcasting, because I'm just like, I love talking. I love being on stage, like all of those different things. What I don't love, the leadership and team hiring and recruitment and HR, not my vibe. Everything else, like the finances and marketing, love it. When I was at the business retreat, I was like, where am I niching? And then I was like looking, I've got this guest coming on. She's beauty business school. Like it's kind of there. And I'm like, maybe this is a push I needed to more target beauty industry leaders and more high-end salons. Because I think for me, I've personally been struggling the last 3 months with the direction my business is heading. And if you know my journey right now, I haven't been 100% focused. I've had a lot of different things going on with, launching this new bowling alley and dealing with government regulations and liquor licenses and, financial stresses, being $1.5 million in debt. It has completely changed my priorities and where I've kind of been at. And I'm in this really beautiful but awkward stage of business where it's like, I'm just growing the podcast and rebuilding everything from scratch with new systems, processes, funnels, going into go high level. My website got built and crashed. Like so many things are going wrong behind the scenes, but I'm just leaning into it now. And I'm just going, it'll work itself out. And I think what I was trying to say, very misguided way of saying it, is when you actually double down on what you're the best at, and you niche into that thing, or there's a specific client you want, even though it feels like you're restricting yourself and you're going, but people won't buy it. It's like, no, people will buy from you because you're the specialist. If you are the skin therapist for women going through menopause, women through menopause are going to look at you and go, oh my gosh, she knows exactly what she's dealing, like she knows exactly how to deal with that, or she knows exactly how to help me. If you are the lash tech for people who, have medical conditions and you understand how all the different medications and things might respond, and you've got great retention for those people who have always been challenged, they're going to be like, wow, that is the person for me. And I know it might sound, is it counterintuitive when you're kind of thinking, I need to serve everything and be everything to everyone and do all the things. Sometimes it's actually the complete opposite. You need to think about, who is it that you love working with? What is it that you do the best? And then how do I create a title or clear messaging that attracts and resonates with that type of person?
That's branding in a nutshell. Nailed it. Branding, marketing, nailed it. And that's the thing. The whole time you were sort of saying that, I'm like, yeah, all of this is like so true and so right. The one thing that I would say is, and I really want salon owners to hear me, because they never hear me and they're like, excuse. If you are not willing to get out of your own way and just do it, show up, implement, actually do the work, and realize, and I think this is the biggest thing that people say to me when they come into beauty business school, they're like, I feel like a business owner now, because I'm like, wake up, you run a business, you need to show up and you need to run a business. And I say it with love, but I'm like, at the end of the day, you are still playing in Hobbyville. Step out and become a business owner. And that means no more excuses. Show up and do it. Get out of your own way. And none of us, especially, like, people often like, but I have this going on and I have that going on. And I sit there and I'm like, I scaled to 250,000 in my first year of coaching with a loved one of mine, literally constantly in and out of the emergency department overdosing. So don't tell me you can't do it. It's too hard. Show up anyway. If you want it and you're passionate about it, you won't make the excuses. You will just do it. And it's the biggest thing that I see in our industry is people being like, I want it, and they're not willing to do the work.
I think as well, a lot of them probably don't actually know what running a business means or looks like. They have seen maybe poor role models running businesses. Maybe they worked for a boss and they weren't treated well, they weren't paid right, whatever it may be. The typical story. They go out on their own and all they think it is like, I'll just have clients and do clients. They're still stuck in the employee mindset. They show up as an employee, but they don't want to look at the marketing, the branding, the finances. They don't look at sales. They've got a lot of money mindset issues or trauma, and they're not willing to work on themselves or evolve. But on the other end of the scale, the people who recognize that from the start and they're like, I have to invest and I got to learn. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to find the answer. Those are the businesses that all the other people who sit there in the industry for like 5-10 years that are so salty, they go, oh, they became an overnight success. They're so lucky. And I think that if we actually reflect and look at what happens behind the scenes for someone to become an overnight success, it's a lot of investment. You said you spent 90K on, personal development and all of that. I spent 100K. Both of us had quote unquote successful coaching businesses that were both profitable from the get-go. And that is because we invested. We didn't sit there and consume all the TikTok videos and YouTube videos thinking, I can go do this. Like you actually have to get in the trenches, do it, and actually learn from people who have done it before you.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing, the trend hopping, like, how can I just make a quick buck? I'll start becoming a trainer or I'll jump into coaching. And there's so many people who, and I say this with love, like I did this on my stories the other day. I said, there's no problem with you wanting to do that. If that's where your passion lies and that's an avenue you want to go down, I'm all for it. But just know that if you're really struggling with picking up the basics in your current business, for example, your marketing, your sales, your branding, financial management, adding another income stream or business into the mix of things is going to add twice the amount of stress and pressure.
100%. And I had to have this conversation with someone recently that I was like, we need to have a conversation about integrity. You can't teach what you haven't done. So what are you going to do? Teach people to do what you've done and you haven't done it and it's not going to work for them. And then it's just going to fizzle out. It's going to be this constant cycle of like getting clients in, them being unhappy, them having the same issues as you because you teach what you know and what you've implemented and works. To everyone that comes into beauty business school, I know it works because it's the same shit that I do now to market beauty business school. So if you join beauty business school, my friend, you have just gone through the marketing system. I'm going to teach you inside.
I love that. I think it's so important to keep doing it as well. Like it's really interesting. I had someone say to me the other day, they're like, I'll become a trainer, but I'll stop doing clients. And I said, well, you don't have to do 5 days of clients, but I would be thinking maybe at least doing one just to keep those skills up to date. Because if you don't do it for a month, you don't do it for 6 months, you don't do it for a year, you might be teaching, you might be great, but you start to lose skills as well.
It's interesting that people default to coaching and like training to be a moneymaker. And I said this on my stories recently. Say a lot of my stories. If you want to like know who I am, I get on every day and I'm like, today was bitch. How's everyone else going? I'm very transparent because I think business owners aren't transparent enough. And I think you will think it's sunshine and rainbows when you look on the outside. And it's absolutely not the truth. Like being a coach is the hardest job I've had in the beauty industry. I cannot stress that enough to people. Being a coach, holding people's businesses, holding their finances in your hands is the hardest thing I have done in the beauty industry. You have to have a solid pair of female or male balls to do this job. Like it is, do not think coaching is an easy job because people will come for you when you are holding their businesses. They will absolutely, they're not getting the results, whether it's them, whether it's you, they are going to defend their baby like it's their baby. And I think that people often default to think there's more money, it will be easier. You're wrong right from the get-go. And I'm not saying don't do it because it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done whilst being the hardest thing that I've ever done. When I went into coaching, everyone was like, oh my God, you're doing so well. I paid myself $500 a fortnight for the first year as a trainer in eyelash extensions. $500 a fortnight for the first year because I wasn't on the tools and I actually had to bring in lashing. I had to start lashing people to support myself, even though from the outside perspective, it looked like I was absolutely killing it. Stop looking at social media and thinking you have the full picture of a business.
I think that is so true. Like right now, building this bowling alley, it has nothing to do with beauty, but it's one of the other businesses I own, family. We've had 8 family businesses, but of that, we've had probably about 4 or so fail. Not like as in we went bankrupt, but they just weren't producing revenue. And then we started another business to then try, kind of make up for the loss of the other one. It was a really bad trap for the first probably 5-10 years. And I was talking to my dad the other day and we were having this conversation. I said, so I've just gone over the finances. I thought our break-even cost was going to be 25 to 30K a month. It's actually 25K a week. So we need to get our ass into gear. And I remember sitting there and I was talking to him. I was like, Dad, it's been 17 years we've been running these businesses. How have you not paid yourself? And I just sat there and I was like, because we have a trust and, sometimes you'll pull money out when you need it and, buy things that you need like cars and stuff. You can do it through the trust. But I sat there and I was like, you haven't paid yourself. That's 17 years. And some people in beauty, they sit here and they go, I'll go start out this business and I want to be making this much money. And I'm going, well, I'm sorry, but you got to like crawl before you can walk. There are going to be hard times. There are sacrifices. And I'm not sure what your perspective or opinion on this is. And this is my own, anyone listening to this, take it with a grain of salt, love it or hate it. But I think the worst thing that's happening right now is the amount of ads I'm seeing that are kind of glamorizing how much money you can make working in the beauty industry, working from home, making 6 figures, is that realistic to do in the first year of business as someone who's never owned a business before, doesn't understand how to actually run a business? In most cases, not. And the amount of money that you spend on buying all the fancy machines or equipment or the setup and then your courses and things like that. And look, you got to suck after your first course. You're not going to be the best in the industry. It takes time to build those skills up. And like I remember, for example, my first lash set took me like 5 hours. There was no way that I could charge X amount, actually make profit. And I think if you're quitting your full-time job and jumping into beauty, or on the other hand, if you are doing beauty and you are making a stable income and then you're thinking, I'm going to jump into coaching and close down my business or, I'm going to make all this money, it takes a lot of time to get one business right. And I think if we're more aware of, I guess, the reality of how long, it doesn't have to take forever. I kind of refrain from saying how long, but it is true. It does take time. You can collapse time with skills, knowledge, experience, and strategy. But in saying that, like you're not going to build a 6, multi-6 or 7-figure business with like overnight with a snap of a finger.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying in the sense of like you do have to crawl to get to where you want to go. And while you're crawling, you have to keep showing up. And that is the least motivating time. And I think that's why people fail in that first couple of years of business is it's like you're crawling through the trenches whilst you're having to put the most work in. So there does get to a point where you are fully booked and you are maintaining your books and you don't have to work as hard and you show up on social media because it feels good as opposed to marketing. And it's like when it feels the shittest is when you have to show up the most. And that is so counterintuitive. And it's like, I don't want to do that. But that's where you're going to make or break your business is showing up when it doesn't feel good and when you want to quit and when it doesn't feel like anything's working. Guys, that's me. I'm 2 months into a business, man. Like I am like, is this working? Is this the right thing to do? People told me I was crazy to want to help people with the foundations of a business. They're like, oh no, they're the ones that default. They're the ones that don't show up. And I'm like, what if that's just a mindset? What if that's a mindset that we've put out there that is what people are like? Because let me tell you, I have some beautiful humans who have been floundering for 4 or 5 years that have 7 times their income because they actually had the right strategy. People would have pushed them to the side and been like, oh no, you're not my ideal client because you're not at XYZ level. What we need instead is people with the right mindset, people who are like, I'm really good at what I do. I am the best kept secret and I am willing to show up and do the work even though I want to cry every night into my pillow.
Let's not keep them crying. Let's give them the strategies and get them thriving.
Even with the strategies, it can feel overwhelming. Like I have conversations and I think we're really shameful of having emotions and feeling things. I have conversations with people day in, day out who have the strategy and they're like, it just feels overwhelming to implement it. I now know what to do and I'm overwhelmed because you are expected to be the accountant. You are expected to be the salon owner. You are expected to clean the salon, order the stock, do all the things. And it's like, well, how much can one plate hold, let alone if you have a partner or kids or a social life or literally anything outside of the business. And that is where this conversation of like, you actually need to get help way before you're ready as well steps in. Get help.
VA, get a VA. Literally within the first 3 months of having a business, get a VA. Doesn't matter if you need them or not. You will find that by even thinking about getting one, it forces you to think about what tasks am I wasting time on that I can all of a sudden get some help with.
Or not even doing. Doing is what I find. A lot of people are like, what am I wasting time on? And I'm like, okay, what are you wasting time on? They're like, no, I'm just not doing it at all.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, you're not going to grow if you don't send the email or you don't post in the local Facebook forum or you don't show up and do a collaboration because it feels too overwhelming. Get someone else to put it together then and then just execute it.
With what you were saying before about, trying to be the partner or the wife or being a mum, being a friend, all of those responsibilities, it seems like a lot when you're a business owner, and especially when, I won't say when you're successful, but I'll say when you're really trying hard to build success, because we know that when you're building something incredible, it takes an unreasonable amount of time and energy. I think we've been kind of brainwashed into thinking that you can build these big businesses overnight or just go viral and it'll be easy and that equals cash. But it's really not the case. It takes time, it takes strategy, and it takes getting the right support, whether that's coaches or mentors, whether that's actually having a team behind you, whether that's getting a consultant. It's literally being able to put all the systems and processes in place to get you there. Now, aside from running a business, what you find is when you're in those stages of hustle, sometimes you isolate. Sometimes you start missing out on being a mum. Sometimes you miss out on going and seeing your friends. Or when you're coming home, and I'm sure if you're listening to this right now, you're going to resonate, but, you pull out your phone and your partner's sitting there. You're actually just trying to switch off. Maybe you're comparing yourself to whatever you're seeing on your social media feed, which isn't healthy. And then your partner's trying to talk to you, but then you're not focusing, and then you get frustrated and you snap back at them. And all of a sudden you have just created this bubble where you are so disconnected from the world, but also yourself. And so because you are more of an expert in this than I am, I would love to ask you some questions that I think would be really relevant to be able to help the listeners today with their relationships outside of business.
Hit me. I'll do my best.
So firstly, I think this is a bit more relevant to me and something that I've been through, and I've had conversations with other people. It's been quite similar. Sometimes when you're doing a lot of different things in business, you can kind of be stuck in that masculine energy. And I know these kind of terms and phrases are thrown around, masculine energy, feminine energy. But, in my previous relationship, I was someone who really prided myself on being busy and doing all the work. And then all of a sudden I found it really hard to actually look at my partner and be like, I'm attracted to you and I value our relationship in time. And all I did was prioritize the business. So if I'm stuck in that state where I feel like the masculine energy is just all I am, how do I step back into that feminine? What does that look like? And how do I keep it so it's healthy?
There is actually so many ways. But the quickest and easiest is we actually store energy in our hips, and we're dipping into a little bit of woo, and there is actually scientific evidence here. And I always say to people, I am woo-woo, but always with science. So I do believe in manifestation. I do believe in all of that, but I try to tap the science in there so it makes sense to my brain, because otherwise I can be a bit skeptical. So we store a lot of energy in our hips, and the quickest and easiest way to come back into our feminine energy, which basically feminine is like flow, and it's where we tap into our artistic side, and it's a much more ease of energy, whereas masculine is like structure and having a schedule and getting everything done and checking the boxes, right? Which is how society is structured, right? We've got to do that. Put on some damn music and dance. Like, it is the simplest way to come back into your feminine energy is to actually put on some music and dance, because we store all of our emotions in our hips. And if you are like dancing, you begin to release those emotions and you become more in flow. Now, you can go with endorphins and all of those sorts of things as well, but that's the quickest and easiest way to do it. The other way is, if you're a yoga lover, hip opening exercises. So getting into yoga, but really focusing on hips and really focusing in opening up those hips. Again, just it releases all of the excess energy that is sitting in your body so that you can be in a more regulated state. So when our nervous system is dysregulated, which is what masculine energy can often do to women, we struggle to go into feminine flow because we're in a fight or flight or fawn state. We're like, what are we going to do? What's the next thing that's coming at us? Now, feminine is really gentle. It's really like artistic. It's something that requires us to be in a state where we are pretty much accepting of it and we're open to it. So you have to almost like prime yourself and have something that allows you to step from the masculine energy into the feminine energy. So it can be doing some yoga, it can be dancing around the house, it can be there's so many different ways. It can be breath work for some people where they're really like tapping into themselves. For me, I noticed it was heavily involved in my hips. Anytime I dance, I fall into my feminine energy. Anytime I'm dancing around the house, I have creative ideas. And it's because of that regulation. It's why people often say, I can't sleep at night because ideas pop into my head. Do you know why? Because your body is regulating. I have the best ideas in the shower. Do you know why? Because your body is regulating. It is coming back into regulation, and the feminine, which is your creativity, your ideas, all of the things that are going to help build an incredible business start flowing in. And you're like, why does this always happen? Because, dude, you're so dysregulated, you can't hear yourself. So it's actually about integrating things that are in that sort of feminine flow, whether it's drawing, whether it's, for me, weirdly, going for a walk with my husband without my phone, going for a walk with my kids without my phone. I am not the kind of person who is good when they're bored. I struggle so badly, and I've really struggled with mum guilt around not being able to play with my children, because quite frankly, I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting there and playing with dolls or playing with Lego or I sit there and I glaze over, literally. So I had to find things that met my kids where they were at, allowed them to communicate with me, but allowed me to also be in that feminine flow of being a mum, of being a partner. So my husband and I, at least once a day, we have a solid 30-minute to an hour walk where there is no interruptions. And we've been able to do that because we obviously now have children at school. But if you have kids who are under school age, we used to just pop them into their prams and just walk. And walk and walk and walk and walk and walk. And we would talk. And I think the biggest piece, if we circle back to relationships, communication is not something that we value enough in our relationships. Yes, we communicate all day long and we talk all day long, but are you actually communicating and having hard conversations with your partner? So we will regularly sit down. We used to sit on the deck out the front of our house, and we would call them deck chats. It became a thing on Instagram for a while. And we would sit there and I would say, genuinely, everyone's going to be like, what? How do you feel about our sex life? How do you feel about our financial situation? How do you feel about the way we're raising our children? Do you feel like there's any areas that we could improve in or that we need to communicate about? When was the last time you checked in with your partner? Like genuinely, not just live and existed, but genuinely said, how are you feeling? And people are often like, oh, I talk to my husband all the time and he doesn't listen to me. And I'm like, do you listen to him first? Lead by example. And that is literally like when I got into personal development, I remember crying to my coach and saying, what if I leave my husband behind? What if he doesn't come on this journey with me? What if he's not interested in personal development, or he's not interested in like connecting with me on this level? And she said, you need to communicate at every single stage or you will leave him behind. And that's what we do as business owners. We advance so far in our business and we don't communicate all the ins and outs of our days, and we just talk about the problems. We may not even talk about how we're feeling inside. We may not even communicate everything, and we very often miss what's going on for them.
It's super interesting because like when you're saying that about, your husband and you need to show up and have that communication, I notice a lot of my clients I've worked with, it almost feels like a taboo topic if they say that they're failing in business or they feel like they're failing. They might not be failing. They might just be having like one bad week, a couple clients cancelled, but instead of leaning on their partner for support, they feel like a burden or they feel embarrassed and so much shame and guilt around this, especially if you're a mom and you have kids and you feel like it's a responsibility to be able to provide and you can't do that. And instead of leaning on your partner for support, you box yourself and you say, you know what, I'm just going to do this all on my own. That's probably the worst thing to do. Would you agree, or do you have anything to add on to that?
I would absolutely agree. And I think the biggest thing that comes up for me around partners and businesses, weirdly, one of the most common things that I hear, and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, that's so unhealthy, is my husband doesn't help, is one. And I'm often like, have you asked for help? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh yeah, I have. No. There is a difference between being like, I need your help, and sitting them down and saying, genuinely, how are you feeling about things around the house at the moment? Great. I love that. I hear that. Maybe we can work on that. And then maybe a day or two later coming back and being like, hey, you know how we spoke about how you were feeling? I really wanted to communicate something with you that I'm feeling at the moment. Because if I came at you, imagine I got on here, Sammy, and I was like, Sammy, I don't like you, da-da-da-da. Your wall is going to fly up as quickly as possible. You're going to be like, who the hell is this chick? You're not going to hear a single word I say. It doesn't matter what I say, how hurtful it is. You are not going to hear me. And what we do is we try to communicate with our husbands or our kids or our loved ones or our clients, or you name the person here, in a dysregulated state when they're dysregulated and we're dysregulated. What is that going to achieve?
Literally nothing.
Communication happens in regulation. True communication happens in regulation. And that doesn't mean that you can't become dysregulated during the communication, but that's where you have to reel it in and be like, hey, I can see that this is like a big topic for us. Let's like pause this, sit on the information that we have and revisit it when we're a bit more regulated. Because today's drama doesn't feel that big tomorrow.
Yes. I think as well, especially with females, I find sometimes we communicate when we're at breaking point and we're in that reactive state, which is what you're saying, you know, you need to be regulated when you're having these conversations. But instead of saying, this is how I actually feel and this is what I mean, you just blurt things out that are hurtful because you just want to be seen and heard and acknowledged. But I think, and especially in leadership roles, and, you know, I'm no leadership expert here, I'm going to put that out there, but I do know humans and I do know communication. If you are critiquing your kids, your husband, your team, this is all the things you're doing wrong and you're not helping me and this is so selfish. No one wants to help you. One thing that really has made a massive difference and improvement in my relationship is I understand females and males communicate differently. Females always go, I feel, and then they insert what they think the problem is or they feel like the problem is. But males, it's like, I think. And because we're females, we are making our decisions or feeling through things with our emotions. Males are just logically thinking about like, why is that happening? How do I create a solution? And so my partner and I are very different because I'm going, I feel like this is a thing. And he's like, no, I think it's this. And I'm like, no, you're just not listening to me. And he would always come up with solutions. And for anyone who is in a relationship, if you ever come to your partner with problems, and there's always these jokes about it, it's like, guys, don't try to create solutions for her. Just listen to her. And so now my partner, every time I say something, he goes, and I had to teach him how to do this, by the way. I didn't actually just, you know, say you're doing everything wrong. I said, you know, it would just be really nice if when I communicate something that you just say, I hear you or I feel you, because all of a sudden that's going to make me realize that you're actually listening to what I'm saying. Because instead of just coming up with a solution or telling me what I need to do, at least I can hear that you're acknowledging me. And I think if you are having those issues in your relationship where you feel like your partner's not listening to you and you're just speaking at them and being a dictator, maybe it is about how you're presenting the problem to them, or how are you making them aware of how they communicate that they're listening to you and they're understanding where you're coming from.
Yeah, 100%. I, believe it or not, it was my mum I had to teach this to. I had to, like, every time I go on the phone, she was like, my mum is the most beautiful, supportive person in the world, but she will be like, yeah, but maybe you did this and maybe you did that. And I was like, you know, I don't need you to point this stuff out to me. So I actually had to be like, hey, I'm calling you and you're a sounding board. Like, I was like, I need no advice. I just need a sounding board. And I do this now with my friends and family that I'm like, am I giving you advice in this situation, or do you just need to be heard?
Yeah.
Which is totally fine, because sometimes we just need to be heard more than anything, and we just need to get it out of our body. So have you heard of the trigger projection cycle?
No, I haven't.
So basically what happens is we get triggered by something, which is normally caused by an internal belief that starts when we were children, right? So we're kids, we have our upbringing, and that teaches us who we are and what we aren't. And a really good example of this is if you see a girl walking around in a short skirt and a short top. In my household, that was absolutely no-go. Like, my dad was raised as a Catholic, and it was like, no, like, all the profanity was said about people like that, right? And as I've grown up and been exposed more and more and more to it, I've had to become desensitized to that way of thinking, that now my daughter wants to wear that stuff. And I'm like, how do I feel about this? So, like, I've had to process that, right? So now my daughter's coming home and she's wearing these little tops, and she thankfully likes nice, beautiful long pants, so I can be a little regulated. But like, shows her belly button, and that was a no in my household. It was like, absolutely not. That's my trigger. Now, a projection would be if I said to my daughter, no, only people who are looking for attention wear outfits like that. That's my trigger, is being projected onto my daughter. Then my daughter is probably going to be triggered, like, what the hell is mum talking about? What sort of attention do you mean? Projecting back onto me. She's going to have a reaction because she can feel in my energy that that's a negative thing. My job as a human and as a mum is to be like, I am triggered and I am not going to project onto my daughter. I am going to take this information, process this information, and see how I genuinely feel. And if this is a belief system that has come from my upbringing that I actually want to end the cycle of, or if I genuinely think she shouldn't be wearing what she's wearing, right? Like, if my daughter came out and no clothes at all, I would be like, young lady, turn your ass around. Like, there is limits. But at the end of the day, like, what we have to do in our business, with our family, with our friends, with our staff, if you decide to bring on a team, is not lead from our triggers and projection. Because if you're leading from your trigger and projection, you will, no negotiation, trigger the other person. And then they will project back onto you, and then vice versa. And then it ends up being 1,000 times worse than if you just said, am I triggered right now? Is there truth in this situation? And what is the lesson? Because if you're triggered, you can work on if it's your trigger and if it's real. Is there truth in the situation of like, okay, well, if there's truth in this situation that yes, they shouldn't have done what they did or shouldn't have said what they done. Great. What's the lesson I can take then? And how can I move forward in a regulated state? Businesses run through dysregulation have a high staff turnover. They have a high client turnover. They end up with a really bad reputation, even if they started with a really good reputation. Because this is where it's like, oh, the salon down the road, oh yeah, they're really bad at brows. None of your damn business. Move on. Not your problem. All you can do is sit there and be like to your clients, I'm going to give you the best damn experience. And I can guarantee you no client is like, it's the best experience because she told me the salon down the road is shit.
So true.
I'm going to need
when you put other people down, it has a lot more to say about whoever's saying the thing rather than who it's actually about. You know? And also you can judge. I know you say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but you can judge a person by their content in the way they speak about other people. So it's really interesting, like the way you hear people speak about friendships gone wrong, breakups, previous business partners, you know, was it amicable? Do you still hold respect for that person, but you've just gone your separate ways? Or is it that they're lying, cheating, you know, like all the nasty little names? It has a lot to say about the person. And it's just like, I think you need to do some healing.
And we're conditioned by that, right? Like my dad never spoke nicely about my mum. My mum didn't speak nicely about my dad. So then when I ended up in a relationship where the partner at the time didn't speak nicely about his ex-partners, I didn't think twice about it. But it was huge red flags for what this person was going to be like moving forward in a relationship. And it was the most toxic relationship I've ever been in. And if I hadn't have been conditioned to the normality of calling people names, I would have picked up on it. So
That's really
there is an
interesting.
element as well of like, people will listen to this and they will be like, I don't like this chick, because we will be bringing up things in them that they're like, whoa, yeah, but I've done that. And that doesn't, like, it didn't come from a nasty place. Well, maybe you're just conditioned that that's normal. I mean, the average person bitches about someone. The average person has emotions and feelings. And that's not to say you can't call your best friend and be like, I had the worst experience ever today with this person. We all do it. I do it, guys. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm not like, I had the worst day. But I recognize my emotions in it. And I'm like, this person was really mean to me today and I'm not really sure why. And I'm sure that that's their own triggers and their own projections, but this is how I'm feeling and how I want to react. But I'm not going to. I'm on the damn phone releasing my energy.
I think there's such a powerful kind of realization that all of this stuff is human. Like myself, you, we have all been through it. Like anyone listening to this probably has some deep-rooted trauma that's linked to high school bullying. And then when they got into the beauty industry, someone did something to them that brought up that trauma again, and then that triggered them and they're like, I have to be alone. I can't have friends. Like there's so many different things that we all connect and resonate with. And just because we're at this stage now where we're coaching or, you know, we're going down a different path, it still doesn't mean that it doesn't happen or we haven't been through it. And I think if you're going through it right now, just know that it's so okay, but it's all about learning how to respond better. So I'll give a perfect example. I was at this business retreat and there was this one girl in the room that really triggered me. You know, she always had her hand up. She was constantly shouting and talking on top of other people. And I could see, obviously reflecting on, you know, a lot of personal development and things. I was like, why is this triggering me? And I realized she wanted to be the center of attention. She needed to be validated. And it really hit me like, why is this such an, you know, problem? Is it something to do with me? Like that's who I used to be? Or is it that this person's just really annoying and, you know, annoying the whole table? It was a bit of both. And I actually think I was talking to you about it and you said to me, sometimes we have these really toxic triggers and it's not about shaming them or trying to get rid of them completely. It's about learning how to validate them in a healthy way. I think that's how you reframed it to me.
Yeah.
And when you said your validation thing, I was like, that was so true for me because obviously if you look at things I've done, owning all these businesses, I've always been, you know, an MC, a presenter, modeling, pageantry, like I used to play musical instruments and be the lead role. There's some commonality here of like Sammy center of attention. When I went through a big realization of like, why am I looking for that attention and what void am I trying to fill? I realized it came from a deep sense of unworthiness and not feeling accepted and seen when I was a kid. And so now that I've worked through that and I've seen those things, and I really love what you said about now you have your validation trigger, you're aware of that, but your validation through a healthy form is now through doing your speaking gigs or like coaching or showing up and like serving people. Now I'm so borrowing that belief because that is way more empowering than thinking I need to be the center of attention because that's not how I feel anymore. But to be able to show up and be like, no, this is how I can serve by using my strengths. I really loved that.
Oh, I'm so glad. So basically this is part of shadow work and it's what we call shadow values. They're the things that you shame or you've been shamed for that you now are like, I don't want to own that about myself. So maybe you are quite loud and you're quite out there and you're always told to be quiet. And now you're like, oh no, I'm a really quiet person. And when you're loud, you throw shame at it. You're like, oh my gosh, like that's awful. Or like me, I love validation. I've always been in theatre. I sung as a kid. I wanted to be the biggest person in the room. I wanted to have all the attention on me. And my mum used to joke about it. And over time, it became something that was really shamed. I remember people being like, oh, she loves the sound of her own voice. You know, just little comments like that. And I shamed them to a point that I shrunk myself. I had this massive booming career and I started to shrink my presence because I was like, oh no, I need to be what everyone needs me to be. I need this person to like me and that person to like me. And I became what our industry calls a chameleon. Oh, I'm a chameleon for my clients. When I hear someone say I'm a chameleon, I'm like, red flag, mate. You don't know who you are. And you should never have to be a chameleon for someone. And I think an activity for people listening, if they've made it this far, well done. But an activity for you guys is to write down the things that you shame about yourself. And the key to shadow work is actually to embody them and become them and find ways that you can actually give yourself that in a healthy way. So people often will seek validation maybe through unhealthy attention, right? And that was me for a long time. If you knew me in my early 18, 19,
Dancing
20,
on
21,
tabletops.
I was very much an attention. And like, it's something that I was very ashamed for a long time, but I worked in a strip club. I wasn't a stripper. I was a bartender and I worked front of house. Fucking loved the attention. But at the time it was really unhealthy, and it was actually coupled with an eating disorder. Like, guys, you're just going to fully know me by the end of this talk, aren't you? But honestly, it was really unhealthy attention seeking. That's when we're like, oh, that person's such an attention seeker. Yes. But probably because they were shamed so deeply about wanting attention that they ended up seeking it in an unhealthy way because they were trying to suppress it. Alcohol brings this right out. So when you look at it like that, if you can take those things that you actually deeply want but won't admit to yourself and find healthy ways to get them, you embody the part of you that is holding you back. You embody the thing that you're like, I can't be that. I can't show up in this way because of. So for me, validation was huge. And now as an adult with children who will be like, do not do that, young lady or man. You don't need that. But basically, when I look at it now, I'm like, how can I get validation in a healthy way? I love presenting. I love talking. I love podcasts. I love connecting. And I love when I see ideas land for people because I'm like, well, that's validation. I knew something you didn't know and I taught you something, and that's really cool. Like, I love that. And I'm unapologetic now. When someone says to me, Kim, I love XYZ about you, I'm like, thank you. And they almost look at me like, oh, and I'm like, I needed to hear that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for giving me that, because that is who I am. When I have complaints or when people aren't happy or I don't think things are working in my business, I am dysregulated. Like, people often don't talk about when they struggle. I struggle the most when things are not working because there is no validation in it for me. If people aren't getting results in a program, if people aren't understanding the program, if people aren't happy in the program, if people don't like me as a coach, oh, you should see behind the scenes the shit I've got to unpack. Because I'm like, well, there's no validation in that. There is no validation, no way for me to fill my cup up. So I have to go through and be like, okay, we're going to unpack it and we're going to take the lessons, and then we're going to realize what maybe was a projection from someone, and we're going to move forward in a really regulated way. But I've got to stop to be able to do that.
But how cool that you now have the tools and the mindset to approach problems like that in your life. You know, Kim 10 years ago probably wouldn't have responded the same way. She probably would have gone on a bit of a bender. No, I'm kidding.
She probably would have, to be fair. I gave up alcohol after lockdown. It wasn't that long ago. I gave up alcohol for 5 months and had to very slowly reintegrate it into my life because my whole family has addictive tendencies, and 100%. Like, I am a hyper-focused lady, and when I hyper-focus on anything, I double down. So, yeah, it is. If you ever see me not drinking at an event, it's probably because I'm not in a good state of mind. And if I'm not in a good state of mind, I won't drink at all, ever. Because it amplifies for me. It amplifies everything. And for the average human, it amplifies. People are like, oh, you broke up with a boyfriend? Get a bottle of wine. No, that is actually the time you should not be having the wine, because drinking when you're in a dysregulated state brings out all of your shadows, all of the things that you don't like about yourself. So not only are you going to feel shitty about the breakup, you're going to feel shitty about how you spoke, acted, behaved, whatever it was when you have the alcohol, because it will bring out all of those insecurities. I believe alcohol truly should only be consumed when you are in a regulated and celebration state.
Interesting you say that. Like, I'm allergic to alcohol, so I don't really enjoy having it. But I think
I just said I love that. Did you hear that? I was like, oh, I love that. I wish I had that. I have to have discipline.
No, I just sit there and I think it's really interesting because, like, when you tell people that you're not drinking, it's almost like but why? But why?
Oh, yeah.
No, just have a drink. It's just one. And it's like, no, I'm not having a drink. You know, it's having those boundaries in place and, like, really respecting yourself enough to kind of not give in and people please to their demands as well. I used to find that really hard when people went, oh, why aren't you drinking? I'm like, oh, I'm allergic to alcohol. Oh, how? And then I'd have to explain to them, I'm like, I don't need to justify why I don't want to drink alcohol, okay?
It's a lot of this, and obviously if you have listeners that are not from Australia, they might be like, whoa, this is hectic. But so much of it is inbuilt in Australian culture. Australian culture is very alcohol-based. It's very tall poppy syndrome, and that it's not to shame Australia because we have a beautiful culture, but also it's just a fact. That like my dad had very successful businesses, and it was always this conversation of you could never talk about how much money you had, but you could buy flashy things and people would know that you had money, right? And then we lost it all. We lost it all a couple of times, and then it was like, oh, we don't have flashy things so everyone knows that we don't have money, right? It was just this whole mindset. So now when I say to people like, I actually don't like flashy things, people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, so what if you lose it? What if you lose it? Then everybody knows you're not successful. So I have this opposite that people are like, I want to be successful and I want to buy Gucci and a Prada and I want to have the car. And I'm like, what if you lose it? Then everyone will know. And that, again, is just the culture that we're raised in. It's how we're brought up. So I have no emotional tie to brands. Zero. Don't care. Couldn't care. You could put a Ford in front of me. You could put I don't know, what's another car, Lamborghini in front of me. And I'd be like, their cars. My husband would be like, look at that car. And I'm like, no interest. Like I genuinely I have no interest. It's loud. And he's just like, wow, I just don't have that association because I associate things with potential loss of things.
That's so interesting. Obviously it takes going through that experience for you to create that meaning.
And that is our society, how we're brought up, who we're raised around, what we are brought up with has a bigger impact than you'll ever know. Like, and there is things constantly that I'm like, why am I like that? Why do I think that? Why do I behave like that? And I had a conversation with my husband the other day. I went for a walk around the Oval with him after a meeting, and I said to him, I just had a meeting and I said something and I don't know why I said it. I don't know why I said this thing. And he was like, do you feel bad about it? I'm like, yeah, it was kind of mean. It was a bit bitchy actually. And I don't behave that way anymore. And I was like, do I say sorry? Do I reach out and be like, I'm so sorry I behaved that way? And he goes, you're triggered. They probably didn't notice. It's your job to stop here and learn the lesson and move forward. And if it ever comes up, be like, yeah, I was a dick. Sorry, I should never have said that.
I think that's so interesting because I do the same thing. I'm very honest and straight to the point, and I've always, that's part of my personality, part of my brand is really having that integrity. But I've noticed, not more so coaching, but definitely in relationship, I'm like, probably didn't need to say that. Sometimes I sit there and then I look back on things in the past and I'm literally cringing at myself. But the last probably 6 to 12 months, as I've been experiencing a lot more hardships with business and stuff, it's brought up a lot of trauma and things that I thought I'd healed from, but I really haven't. And really looking deeper into and this is just for anyone listening, if you've been really struggling with being able to implement things in your business or you're not really getting ahead, and like we were speaking about before, you keep having the same problem coming up, it's because you just haven't learnt the lesson or you haven't moved through it properly. And I think the greatest lesson lately, or I guess activity or thing I've been doing, is questioning why for everything. Not in an anxiety state of why me, why this, why that, but it's just why do I respond that way when this comes up for me? Why do I have that belief? Where did that come from? Was it my parents? Was it my teachers? Was it, a mentor or a coach? Was it someone else in the industry? And why am I choosing to continue believing this if it's not serving me? And what's something that's more empowering? And I think to really wrap this episode up, we spoke about a lot of different things, and I think it could have gone from marketing to mindset to really understanding relationships or communication, anything. If you are ever feeling stuck in business or you're just trying to get to the bottom of where your problems are, just ask yourself why. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I think I'm experiencing this? What's the problem? Where does this come from? Just question everything, because what I've started to find is whatever I think the problem is on the surface, it's never that. When I ask myself why, 5 whys deeper, I actually get to what the root cause is. And that's when I'm able to then make those changes, or just first take ownership and acknowledge or appreciate or accept that that's how I'm feeling, and then look for the support or the help or what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it really is like when you get in your own brain and you're actually in there, not just existing, you find a whole new world. And it has the power to build an exceptional business and exceptional relationships if you're willing to pay attention.
So, Kim, where can people find you and connect with you if they want to see more about Beauty Business School, your journey, your little Insta story rants about whatever you're feeling on the day? I definitely love seeing them. Where can they find you?
Well, you can find me at Counting on Kimberley or Beauty Business School. That's beauty_business_school_, because someone had already taken the cool name. So I had to put all these underscores in it. But honestly, you can probably find me here. We're nearly 2 hours in. I'll just be on the podcast.
Yeah, well, Kim's got her own podcast coming out for Beauty Business School as well. So you can tune into that, which will be really epic.
Thank you. I'm really excited.
I always suck at closing up episodes. I'm like, do I just wrap it up here or do I keep doing it?
Oh, no. I honestly think you're going to have to split this into two. It's been a big conversation.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you got a lot of value, or maybe it really triggered you to think differently, make some changes. Check out the links in the show notes if you want to see more about Kim, or if you love the episode, please take a screenshot and share it to your story and tag us. We'd love to see what your feedback is. Otherwise, have an amazing week and I will catch you next week. Bye.
Audience exclusive.